Hey, Leah. I'm going to talk about sugar. So if you want to hear about sugar, stick around. And questions. Okay. Alrighty. So, of course. Well, good. I will talk to you. And so if you have any questions, then you can post them. But I want to spend a little bit of time talking about what sugar addiction is, because and why it's a problem, as well as what you can do about it. So today is part 1. Tomorrow I'm going to do part 2 with the health coach. And then on Wednesday, I'm going to do an entire webinar, and that'll be on Facebook Live. So let's talk a little bit about sugar in general. So first of all, sugar addiction is that feeling that you have when you can't stop eating certain foods, right? So whether that's the bread at the bread table when you go out to eat, whether that's your stash of sweets that's right by your bed. I have so many clients who talk about that. If it's the glass of juice that you say you're going to have one glass, but then you have multiple. But it's not just that. It is the idea around feeling like you have no control over what you eat, as if the foods that you eat control you as opposed to you controlling those foods. And the big mystery, or the big aha moment here is that it's not your fault, right? It's not your fault that you crave the foods that you eat. And it's really by design that we eat the foods that we eat, right? Because the foods that we have our access to, all of them, 80% of them have sugar in them. So I was just thinking about this today. I don't know if you've seen They Clone Tyrone. And in They Clone Tyrone, it's a film on Netflix with Jamie Foxx. And in that, they talk about there being something in chicken that is brainwashing Black people. And it's not what's in the chicken, right? It's in everything, right? 80% of the foods that we have in the grocery stores, 80% of them have added sugar to it. And so what happens is that chemically, the way that sugar works in our body, chemically, it causes an addiction. It causes cravings by stimulating parts of our hormonal system that I'm not going to spend time talking about, but you can understand, because you've experienced in your own life, how sugar plays a role in your ability to sustain a certain diet, eat a certain way, to be able to walk into a room full of sweets, knowing you don't want to eat sweets, but then still feel that urge to go and eat that cookie or that second cookie. But again, it's not just the cookies and the candies. It's the pasta, it's the rice, it's the bread. And it's even things that you wouldn't think of. It's the yogurt, it's the tomato sauce, it's the ketchup, it's the mustard. I mean, when you think about all of the foods that are out there, added sugar is in the majority of them. So what's the problem? So most of people think of the problem as being, okay, so I eat a lot of sugar, and one of the biggest problems is weight. So that's one issue, right? But it's not just the worst possible thing that could happen to you is not the weight. It's actually the chronic illnesses that come along with it. It's the symptoms that you have. So it's the fatigue, the brain fog, the diabetes, the high blood pressure, the heart disease, the strokes. So all of these diseases that we usually typically say are the result of aging, or we say that they're the result of genetics, aren't the result of aging or genetics at all. It's the result of the foods that we eat, but particularly sugar, because sugar has such an impact on the way that our hormones function. So with that being said, if that's the case, then what do you do about it? Well, one of the things that I hear most people talk about, which I think is probably the worst piece of advice somebody can give when it comes to eating, is everything in moderation. And that's not because it's not good advice. It's actually great advice. The problem is that it's with this idea that because you can have everything in moderation, that everything is food. And so what I tend to challenge people on is understanding the difference between food and edible things that are edible that aren't actually food. And when you start eating things that aren't food, that don't provide nourishment, then what happens is that they're typically chemicals that are controlling, for no better a word, how your brain functions, how your gut functions, and what you decide to eat. So if that's the case, what do you do about it, right? Part of the solution is to understand what food is and what power. Yes, everything is not food. And it's important for people to understand that. And once you understand it, then you can start to decipher what is appropriate for when we say everything in moderation. So is a cookie a real food? Well, it is, right? But a cookie that you can't control whether or not you eat it or not, right? That controls you, that you have no power over whether you eat that cookie or not. That is the problem. And so the way we deal with that is we have to reprogram our brain. We have to reprogram our taste buds. We have to reprogram our hormones. And so this is the reason why I developed the course that I created, which was Cocaine in My Cookies. Now, I created this course back in 2012 when I was at Stanford. I was teaching a class on trying to help people understand that changing your diet doesn't have to be a fight. You don't have to fight yourself to be able to eat well. What you do need to do is reprogram the chemical structures in your body. And the way that you can do that is by, for a short period of time, removing the foods that are causing a problem. At the same time as you're doing that, also learning about what foods are good for your body, also giving your body the nourishment, the nutrients it needs to actually function the way that your body is supposed to function. And so once you're able to do that reset, you're able to reboot, and you've given your body the nutrients it needs, and you've given your mind the education that it needs. Once you are able to do that, then number one, your cravings are less, right? You now can control what you eat. So it doesn't mean that you can't ever have sugar again. When I go into a place and I say, okay, I want one cookie, I can eat one cookie. But a lot of people aren't able to do that. Right? There are some people who walk into a place and then you put bread on the table and you have one piece and you say, I'm just going to have that one. And then you go for the second and the third. And then internally you're thinking, oh, it's me, right? It's my willpower. I don't have willpower. But that's not the issue. The issue is that you haven't reprogrammed. You haven't reset. So what I try to teach people is how to reset the chemistry that's going on in the brain, which is a dopamine driven reaction. And I only use that word so you understand that there's actual chemistry that's happening, right? It's not your willpower. It's the chemistry. So you have to reprogram that chemistry. And of note on that, the reason why the name of my program is Cocaine in My Cookies, it's because that sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. I'm going to say that again. Sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. Now that may seem like impossible, but you know it's true. Right? Because you can walk into any room and not be able to stop eating things that you want to be able to stop eating. Right? You should be able to tell your mind, I don't want it, but you have it anyway. How is that any different than the person who wants the next hit of tobacco or that next hit of alcohol or that next... You're not a crackhead, you're a sugarhead. And the sugar is really... like I said in the beginning, the reason why it's a problem is not just because you shouldn't have sugar. It's because when we look particularly at chronic illnesses, right, we look at what happens to our bodies over time, we think that we don't have any control over whether we get diabetes or not, or if we gain weight or not, or if we end up with heart disease or cancer. We feel like we don't have any power, but what I'm telling you right now is that you do have power. And that power is in ensuring that your body is functioning the way that it needs to. So we talked about restructuring the way the brain works, right? And then we also, the other thing that we want to do is we want to restructure the way our taste buds work. Now that seems a little silly, but the reality of it is a lot of people, when I talk about this topic, they're like, well, I can't give up. Like I need to be able to have my X, Y, and Z. Right? I need to be able to have my sugar, my coffee with its sugar, or my sugar with my coffee, right? And so this idea that we have to have it is really just training. It's taste bud training. You'll be surprised as you go through a detox that the things that used to be just sweet enough for you are now too sweet. You'll notice that having foods that you used to love no longer are things that you crave anymore. And actually, there might be a part of you that mourns that. Like, I really, really used to enjoy like a particular cheesecake, right? And now it's like I can take it or leave it, and it's like there's a part of me that just like, but I really liked it, but I'm really reminiscing on a time when I had no control, right? But now that I'm in more control, I can decide to have a bite of that cheesecake and leave the rest for later. But what's even better about resetting your taste buds is that now foods that a lot of people may consider healthy, like things that are nasty, are now actually quite delicious, right? So now an orange tastes like heaven, right? The foods that have natural sweetness in them, now really that sweetness starts to burst. But you have to retrain your taste buds to do that, particularly if you've lived your whole life basing your what you enjoy based off of things that have added sugar, right? So things like when I was a kid, Kool-Aid, or the sweet tea my grandmother used to make, or the cakes my grandmother used to make. She used to make this coconut cake that had more sugar in it than a little bit. So those are what my taste buds started to like. And then when you start talking about artificial sweeteners and your taste buds adjusting to that, it just makes things even worse, right? So you have a ton of people out here who are drinking diet sodas, diet teas, diet crackers that are supposed to be better for you because we think that the extent of food ends at calories, and it doesn't. It ends at biochemistry, which I don't have time to go into right now. But the point is that you start to adjust your taste buds to artificial sweeteners, and those also wreak havoc on your biochemistry, your hormones, and your microbiome, all of the things that determine what you eat. And so that's number 1 and 2. It's your brain, it's your taste buds, and then the third thing is your microbiome. So the reason why this is important, your microbiome is the bacteria in your intestines. You are more bacteria than you are anything else. You have more bacteria cells, more bacteria DNA than you have human cells or human DNA. And that bacteria actually can cause you to crave foods. So think about it this way. If you've been living on this earth for 40 years, and for 40 years you've been eating a whole bunch of added sugar, the bacteria in your gut have also been eating added sugar. And the bacteria that live, survival of the fittest, the ones that live are the ones that like sugar. So what happens is that whenever you stop eating sugar, the bacteria in your gut send out chemicals to your brain that says eat more sugar because that's what we like. Eat more sugar because that's what we like. All this time you've been thinking it's your mind, but it's not your mind. It's the bacteria in your gut that's telling you what to eat. So when I say, you want to reset, you want to do a sugar detox, it's about reprogramming all of those areas. And once you reprogram those areas, you don't have to fight anymore. You don't have to struggle. Like eating well does not have to be a struggle. And so the course that I created, Cocaine in My Cookies, is where I always think people should start. Because when I ask people to change their behaviors, to change the way they eat, and they get very overwhelmed and stressed about it, it's because they're being driven by factors that if they don't reset them, it makes it very, very hard to stick to an eating plan or a lifestyle behavior that is going to be sustainable because you're being driven by outside factors or factors that you don't feel like you can control. So tomorrow, I'm going to do another live, and this is going to be with the health coach, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we actually address it. What exactly is a sugar detox? How does it work? And can you do it by yourself? Do you need to do it with support? And I'm here to answer any other questions that you might have about a sugar detox. So I just wanted to get on today just to sort of give you that overview of what sugar is, how it affects you, and why you should do something about it. If you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer it. I'll stay in for just a few minutes to see if you have any questions. And if not, yes, I will see you tomorrow to discuss what we can do about sugar detox, about sugar addiction, and more. All right, you guys, talk to you soon. Thanks for showing up.